A perfect pyramid and a ring of standing stones share a hidden architectural language. Ancient cultures separated by oceans and thousands of years built their greatest monuments using the same mysterious design rules. By the end of this journey, you will understand the universal blueprint that connects humanity's earliest architectural masterpieces. How did builders at opposite ends of the Earth discover identical geometric and astronomical principles without ever meeting? And why do their structures still captivate us today? What forgotten connection to our shared past do these silent stone giants hold? That enduring power of stone connects us directly to the minds of the builders. Monumental architecture is far more than just large buildings. It is humanity's boldest attempt to carve a permanent message into the landscape. These structures were designed from the very beginning to outlast their creators, to speak across centuries to people they would never meet. Think of the Parthenon in Athens, its marble columns standing watch for over 2,000 years, having witnessed the full sweep of empires and ages. This is the essence of a monument, a physical expression of cultural values, spiritual beliefs, and technological mastery, all fused into one enduring form. What separates a true monument from a simple large building are several key characteristics. The scale is always massive, deliberately dwarfing the human form to inspire awe. The materials are not just strong but incredibly durable, chosen for their ability to withstand the relentless passage of time. The engineering is sophisticated, solving immense structural puzzles that still leave modern experts in admiration. And the placement is never accidental. These structures are intentionally situated within sacred or significant landscapes, often aligned with celestial bodies. From the towering ziggurats of Mesopotamia that reached for the gods, to the perfectly geometrical pyramids of Egypt that served as gateways to the afterlife, these were not just projects, they were a civilization's ultimate aspirations made solid. They functioned as centers of cultural identity, as precise astronomical observatories, and as three-dimensional maps of a people's understanding of the cosmos. One of the most profound differences from how we build today is the timeline. Constructing these wonders was a multi-generational endeavor, a project that grandparents would start and their grandchildren might never see completed. This long-term vision, this shared commitment to a legacy beyond any single lifetime, is what gives these places their timeless symbolic power. To understand what makes architecture truly monumental is to begin deciphering the shared human impulse that drove cultures worldwide to create legacies in stone. That master architect in the sand was tapping into a universal language, one that would be spoken by stones for millennia. This is the principle of sacred geometry, the hidden mathematical harmony woven into the world's oldest monuments. It was the belief that certain shapes and numbers were more than just practical, they were divine, the circle representing the infinite cosmos, the square symbolizing the stable earth. The triangle pointing toward the heavens. By using these forms, builders were not just constructing a building, they were encoding their understanding of the universe into its very blueprint. They sought out specific harmonious ratios like the golden section, a proportion of approximately 1.618 that appears again and again in nature, from the spiral of a seashell to the arrangement of petals on a flower. This ratio was seen as a bridge between our world and a higher order. The precision is staggering. The base perimeter of the Great Pyramid of Giza relates to its original height through the mathematical constant pi, a ratio for circles, built into a square-based structure with breathtaking accuracy. Thousands of years and a continent away, the builders of Stonehenge laid out their massive blue stones in perfect concentric circles and arcs, a geometry of the heavens mirrored on the ground. This same fascination with perfect circles and squares appears in the intricate floor plans of Hindu temples, designed as cosmic maps for the divine. The question is not whether they copied each other, but why they all arrived at the same elegant solutions independently. It points to a profound idea that the human mind, when seeking to represent the sacred, naturally gravitates toward these fundamental patterns of harmony and balance. These shapes felt right because they reflected a deeper structure of reality itself. The monuments stand as a testament to a shared human intuition, a collective recognition that true beauty is rooted in an invisible mathematical order. That hidden mathematical order was not confined to the earth, but reached for the stars. Across the globe, we find the silent stones of ancient monuments speaking a language of celestial motion. A priest watching the summer solstice sunrise would mark the exact spot on the horizon, and that single point would dictate the entire orientation of a temple meant to last for ages. This was not a rare practice, it was a fundamental rule. From the pyramids of Giza perfectly mirroring the 3 stars of Orion's belt, to the giant pillars of Stonehenge framing the solstice sun, these structures were colossal stone calendars. In ancient Mesoamerica, the Pyramid of El Castillo at Chichen Itza was designed with such precision that during the equinoxes, the play of light and shadow creates the illusion of a massive serpent slithering down its staircase. This effect required an incredible depth of astronomical knowledge and flawless execution from the architects. They were not merely building to impress, they were building to connect. The central purpose was to tie human society to the cosmic clockwork, to the reliable rhythms of the sun, moon, and stars. This shared emphasis points to something profound in the human spirit, a universal urge to find our place within a larger, orderly universe. How could cultures with no possible contact each look to the heavens and decide that their greatest architectural achievements must be locked in sync with the sky? The answer may lie not in shared blueprints, but in a shared human experience of looking up at the night sky and feeling a deep need to build a bridge between our world and the vast expanse above. This belief in a cosmic center was built directly into the stone. An ancient civilization truly saw its greatest temple as the center of all existence, a fixed point where heaven, earth, and the underworld could meet. This is the power of the axis mundi, a universal architectural principle that gave a chaotic world both spiritual meaning and physical orientation. It was the ultimate anchor for a culture's entire worldview. In Mesopotamia, the massive ziggurats did not just impress with their size. They were artificial mountains with stairways designed to lift priests and rituals closer to the realm of the gods. Far to the west, the Egyptian pyramids were more than royal tombs. They were brilliantly engineered ramps, their smooth, angled sides believed to channel the soul of the pharaoh directly to the eternal stars. Across the Atlantic, the towering pyramids of Mesoamerican cities like Teotihuacan were explicitly named for the sacred mountains of local myth, their summits the place where the human world touched the divine. This vertical drive was not merely symbolic, it created an undeniable psychological focal point. The entire city, and indeed the entire understanding of the cosmos, was organized around this central, elevated structure. It was the still point around which the universe turned. How could this same idea of building a literal axis for the world appear so consistently across cultures that never knew each other? It points to a profound and shared human need. In a vast and often unpredictable world, these monuments provided a fixed point of meaning. They established order out of chaos, telling everyone who lived in their shadow that they were at the very center of something significant. These structures organized not just stone and city, but the human spirit itself, answering a deep-seated urge to find our place within the grand scheme of existence. The immense stones of Stonehenge and the Great Pyramid are not just heavy, they are profoundly meaningful. These materials were not chosen simply because they were nearby or easy to work with. For the Egyptians, gleaming white limestone casing was meant to reflect the sun god Ra, while the hard, black granite of a burial chamber symbolized the fertile, dark soil of rebirth. The Maya coated their limestone pyramids in bright red stucco, making them blaze like fiery mountains against the jungle sky. This was a symbolic language written in stone. The effort to speak this language was staggering. Quarrying and transporting an 80-ton block of granite hundreds of miles with only ropes, sledges, and human muscle was an act of pure devotion. Why go to such extremes when a local stone might have served? The answer lies in a world view where the physical substance of the earth was alive with spiritual power. A particular type of stone was not just a building block, it was a piece of the cosmos itself. The Incas demonstrated this with their breathtaking polygonal masonry, where massive, irregular stones fit together with impossible precision. This was not just brilliant engineering, it was a philosophical statement. The interlocking stones, each unique and yet perfectly supporting the whole, mirrored their belief in the interconnectedness of all things in the universe. The material was the message. The shimmering white marble of the Greek Parthenon was not merely beautiful, it was a physical representation of divine light and purity, a mountain of the gods brought down to earth. This universal drive to use specific, often distant materials tells us something profound about these cultures. Monument building was a spiritual act of creation, where the very substance of the structure had to align with its celestial purpose. The stone itself was sacred. This leads us to a deeper question, one that moves beyond the materials to the hands that shaped them. How did such diverse cultures, working in isolation, develop such remarkably similar and advanced construction techniques to bring their sacred visions to life? The ancient architect's own body was the first and most sacred measuring tool. An arm's length, a hand's breadth, the span of footsteps, these became the foundational units for monuments that reached for the heavens. This was the profound paradox of ancient design, to use the intimate scale of the human form to create structures of cosmic dimension. The Egyptian royal cubit, standardized to the length from a man's elbow to the tip of his middle finger, was then multiplied thousands of times to lay out the perfect square base of a pyramid. The Maya used a similar body-based unit, the vinil, to proportion their towering temples. The result was architecture that did not simply overwhelm the viewer, but created a specific, harmonious experience. You were meant to feel both awe at the immense scale and a strange, intuitive sense of order, as if the building resonated with your own physical being. This harmony was no accident but the product of sophisticated optical refinements. Look at the Parthenon in Athens. Its majestic columns are not perfectly straight. They feature a subtle swelling known as entoses, a slight curvature intentionally designed to counteract an optical illusion that would make straight, towering columns appear to bend inward. The builders preferred the complex truth of perception over simple geometric truth. This same deep understanding of human vision is etched into the Great Pyramid. The precise mathematical relationship between its base perimeter and its original height creates a specific, powerful geometric form that feels inherently stable and eternal. These were not just buildings, they were psychological instruments crafted from stone. The consistent cross-cultural use of these proportional systems points to a shared discovery. Early architects working independently seemed to uncover universal principles about how we perceive and experience scaled spaces. they learned that certain ratios, like the now famous golden section, produced a feeling of natural balance and beauty in the human brain. By building according to these ratios, they were aligning their creations with a cosmic order they believed was woven into the fabric of reality. A temple was not just a place of worship, it was a physical manifestation of universal harmony. When a visitor stood before such a structure, they were not merely looking at a large building, they were being immersed in a perfected world, a realm where human proportion and cosmic scale became one. This shared architectural language suggests that the impulse to build spaces that are both awe-inspiring and deeply comforting is a fundamental part of the human spirit. But how did such isolated cultures translate these perfect proportions from blueprint to reality, moving and placing stones with impossible precision? The stones themselves were designed to sing. Deep within Malta's hypogeum, a subterranean temple carved from solid rock, the chanting of priests would have resonated at a specific frequency, a low hum that seemed to fill the very air and vibrate through the body. This was not a happy accident of architecture. Across the ancient world, we find monuments engineered with a sophisticated understanding of sound, creating spaces where acoustics were as crucial as aesthetics. In the great ball courts of the Maya, a handclap at one end would produce a series of distinct cascading echoes, sounds that may have been interpreted as the voices of gods or ancestors. The massive, corbelled stone chambers of Newgrange in Ireland naturally amplify certain tones, transforming a simple vocalization into something profound and otherworldly. And in the open-air theatres of ancient Greece, the design of the seating and stage allowed a single, unamplified voice to reach every one of the thousands of spectators with perfect clarity. These acoustic marvels were intentional, the result of precise calculations in stone. Architects strategically placed resonating chambers, angled reflective surfaces, and even used specific sound-dampening materials to sculpt the sonic environment. They understood the behavior of sound waves through empirical genius long before the science of physics gave it a name. Why was sound so universally vital? It points to a multisensory ceremonial experience that we can barely grasp today. In these sacred spaces, sound was not just heard, it was felt. The reverberation in your chest, the strange echo that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, these sensations could induce altered states of consciousness, deepen communal trance, and make the presence of the divine feel terrifyingly real. The architecture was an instrument, and the ritual was its music. This shared acoustic priority reveals that ancient monument builders sought to engage the whole human sensorium, creating immersive environments where sight, sound, and feeling merged into a single, transformative experience. They were not just building for the eyes, but for the ears and the spirit. This profound understanding of how space shapes experience leads us to an even broader pattern, a set of unwritten rules that seem to have guided builders from the British Isles to the Andes. The silent stones of these monuments were not meant to exist in a vacuum, but to interact with the most vital of earthly elements. From the Great Bath of Mohenjo-Daro to the expansive moats of Angkor Wat, water was not an afterthought, it was a central component of the sacred design. These ancient builders possessed a sophisticated understanding of hydrology, weaving complex water management systems directly into their grandest architectural visions. In the Indus Valley, the Great Bath was not merely a pool, but the heart of a city, featuring advanced drainage and waterproofing that managed both ritual purity and public health. The water channels surrounding the temples of Angkor Wat were not just decorative, they were a mirror of the cosmos, their placement reflecting celestial patterns and symbolizing the mythical oceans surrounding the world mountain. Across the globe, the Maya constructed vast reservoirs and intricate canal networks that sustained their sprawling urban populations, while also representing their belief in the watery underworld and the cyclical nature of life. This integration served a profound dual purpose. Practically, it controlled erosion, enabled agriculture to support the massive workforce, and managed the very real challenges of seasonal rains and groundwater. Spiritually, the controlled movement of water through these spaces reenacted cosmic stories, with fountains, channels, and pools becoming a liquid representation of divine order. How did water management become so deeply fused with monumental architecture? It reveals a worldview where human construction was not separate from the natural world, but an extension of it. To build a temple was to engage with the forces of the earth, to channel rivers and capture rain as part of a sacred dialogue. The Roman aqueducts, monumental in their own right, demonstrate how this engineering prowess was seen as a civic and spiritual duty, bringing life-giving water to magnificent public baths and fountains. This universal principle challenges our modern assumptions about primitive technology. The precise gradients, the careful sealing of tanks, the grand scale of these hydrological projects all point to a highly developed understanding of civil engineering, achieved through generations of observation and innovation. The monuments did not just stand against the elements, they worked with them, transforming practical necessity into a powerful statement about harmony between human ambition and the natural world. The sheer scale of these projects required a social architecture as advanced as the stonework itself. To move an 80-ton block of granite, you needed more than ropes and sledges. You needed a society capable of extraordinary coordination. The invisible organization behind these wonders was a monumental achievement in its own right. The Egyptian state did not rely on slaves with whips, but on a rotating workforce of skilled laborers who were housed, fed, and honored for their service. They developed sophisticated ramp systems that snaked up the growing sides of the pyramid, allowing teams to haul stones higher and higher. This was not chaotic toil. It was a carefully choreographed ballet of human effort, with specialized trades from quarrymen to stone setters all working in a harmonious sequence. On the remote island of Rapa Nui, the community developed a unique solution for their massive moai statues. Oral histories and modern experiments suggest they walked the multi-ton figures across the landscape, with teams rhythmically rocking them from side to side. A slow, deliberate procession that turned the land itself into a machine. These were not acts of brute force, but of applied physics and social trust. The ability to feed, manage, and motivate thousands of people for generations required a shared belief in the project's ultimate purpose. These construction sites became crucibles of social transformation, turning scattered groups of individuals into a unified civilization with a common identity. The stone monuments we admire today are therefore the physical evidence of humanity's profound capacity for collective action. They stand as permanent reminders that our greatest accomplishments have never been the work of lone geniuses, but the culmination of shared vision, meticulous organization, and the coordinated labor of countless hands. How did such diverse societies, from the deserts of Egypt to the islands of the Pacific, each independently invent these complex systems of management and engineering? It reveals a universal human truth that when we are united by a powerful idea, we become capable of moving mountains, or at the very least, of carving them into timeless legacies. A city's main street was never just a path for travel. It was a sacred axis pointing toward the heart of the cosmos. The consistent orientation of the world's monuments to the cardinal directions is one of the most powerful examples of this shared architectural language. It was a universal act of ordering chaos, of imposing a human understanding of celestial harmony onto the landscape. In ancient China, the principles of Feng Shui dictated that imperial palaces and cities follow a strict north-south axis, with the emperor facing south to receive the benevolent energies of the universe. This was not simple tradition, it was a way of aligning human governance with the fundamental forces of nature. Far across the world, the Great Pyramid of Giza was aligned to true north with an accuracy that still baffles modern surveyors. Its builders achieved this not with magnetic compasses, but by precisely tracking the circumpolar stars, locking their king's eternal resting place to the very axis of the sky. In Mesoamerica, temples consistently faced west toward the realm of the setting sun and the underworld, connecting the rituals performed atop them to the endless cycle of death and rebirth. This directional alignment was a form of storytelling in stone. The layout of a city or a temple complex often reenacted mythological narratives about the creation of the world, with each direction holding specific symbolic meaning, power, and even associated deities. The East, the place of the rising sun, universally symbolized birth and renewal, while the West represented the journey into the afterlife. Why did cultures separated by continents and millennia all feel this profound need to align their greatest works with the four cardinal points? The answer lies in a universal human desire to find our place. By building structures that mirrored the predictable paths of the sun and stars, these societies rooted themselves in a cosmos that was orderly and meaningful. Their world was not a random collection of places, but a carefully oriented map of spiritual reality. The incredible precision of these alignments, often accurate to within a fraction of a single degree, proves this was no casual gesture. It was the product of generations of astronomical observation and a deep, cross-cultural conviction that for a building to be truly monumental, it had to be in conversation with the turning of the earth itself. The steps of a pyramid were a tangible path to the heavens. Every single level you climbed brought you closer to the divine, leaving the mundane world further below. This was the principle of hierarchical space in action, a universal architectural language that translated abstract ideas of power and sanctity into physical reality. The design was a deliberate, three-dimensional lesson. In an Egyptian temple complex, you did not simply walk into the holiest chamber. You first passed through a massive pylon gate, then a sunlit courtyard open to many, then a dim hypostyle hall reserved for the elite, and finally, through a series of ever smaller rooms, you reached the dark, silent sanctuary where the god statue resided. This carefully orchestrated journey used space itself to teach a fundamental truth, that access to the divine was a gradual, restricted privilege. The sacred was separated from the profane by walls, gates, and changing elevations. This architectural expression of order was not limited to temples. The sprawling layout of Beijing's Forbidden City is a masterclass in using scale and ornament to signify imperial authority. To approach the emperor, you moved through a succession of vast courtyards and crossed majestic bridges, each space grander than the last, each gate requiring a higher status to pass. The message was unmistakable, power concentrated at the center, and your place was defined by how close you were permitted to get. Even in the democratic city-states of ancient Greece, the temple lay out distinguished spaces. The inner cella was for the priests and the cult statue, while the public rituals and offerings occurred outside, in the space surrounding the altar. The architecture itself taught people their role in the religious and social structure. How did this function as an educational tool for entire civilizations? For the vast majority of people who were not literate, the monument was the primary text. A child growing up in these societies learned their place by simply experiencing the built environment. They understood that the wide, lower terraces of the ziggurat were for communal gathering, but the soaring upper platform, visible to all but reachable by few, was the exclusive domain of the high priest. The structure was a constant physical reminder of the cosmic and social ladder. The cross-cultural consistency of this principle is profound. From the stepped pyramids of Mesoamerica to the tiered temples of Southeast Asia, we see the same architectural strategy, using height, access, and progression to manifest a hierarchy. It suggests that when a society sought to create a stable, enduring order, it instinctively turned to architecture to make that order visible, tangible, and unquestionable. The stones did not just house rituals, they silently taught every generation who they were and where they belonged in the grand design of the universe. The mountain itself was the final architect at Machu Picchu. Its granite structures were not placed upon the summit, but were carved from it, their terraces and temples flowing with the natural contours of the peak as if they had grown there. This was architecture as extended geology, a philosophy where human building did not conquer the landscape but completed it. At Petra, entire temples were hewn from the living rock of rose-colored cliffs, their facades emerging from the stone as if revealed by time, not constructed by hand. This deep integration was a conscious choice, a form of sacred geomancy where the site was selected for its inherent spiritual power and practical advantages. The builders of Stonehenge did not place their circle in an empty field, but at the heart of a vast ceremonial landscape, surrounded by ancient burial mounds and processional avenues that connected the monument to the surrounding hills and rivers. In Egypt, temples were precisely positioned to align with the annual flooding of the Nile, their axes oriented so that the life-giving waters would reflect in their sacred pools, tying the rhythm of worship directly to the rhythm of the earth. Why was this harmony so universally vital? It reveals a worldview where humanity was not separate from nature, but an active participant within a living, breathing cosmos. Building was a form of dialogue. A cliff face was not an obstacle to be cleared, but a partner offering shelter and mass. A mountain spring was not just a water source, but a divine vein to be channeled through ceremonial baths. This approach created places that feel inherently right, where the boundary between what was built and what was formed blurs into irrelevance. The result was more than just a stable foundation. It was a profound sense of belonging. These monuments feel anchored not just in soil, but in the very soul of the place. They teach us that the most enduring architecture does not stand out from the world, but speaks with it, a conversation in stone that has lasted for millennia. These carved surfaces were a civilization's library, open to the sky. Every inch of a temple's wall or a pyramid's passageway could be encoded with meaning, transforming silent stone into a dynamic teacher for an entire society. The intricate carvings on a Hindu temple do not simply decorate. They narrate the entire cosmic dance of creation and destruction, with gods and goddesses acting out stories that define the universe's moral order. In ancient Egypt, towering columns were not just structural supports, they were covered in hieroglyphs, a continuous text that recorded royal decrees, offered prayers to the gods, and guaranteed the pharaoh's safe passage into the afterlife. This was ornamentation with a profound purpose, a visual language designed to communicate with both the literate elite and the non-literate majority. For those who could read the symbols, the walls offered a detailed sacred text. For everyone else, the powerful images themselves, the scenes of victory, devotion, and cosmic struggle, conveyed the core values and beliefs of their culture. This was how complex ideas were made permanent and public. The magnificent reliefs on Mesopotamian palace walls showed the king hunting lions or receiving tribute, broadcasting a clear message of power, control, and divine favor to every visitor. The swirling, abstract patterns carved into Celtic standing stones likely represented spiritual concepts of eternity and the interconnectedness of all life, a philosophical idea made visible and tangible. In the Americas, the elaborate facades of Maya pyramids illustrated their vibrant creation myths, with feathered serpents and rain gods telling the story of how the world came to be. This visual language was not an afterthought, it was integral to the building's very identity. How did these ornamental programs function as such effective educational tools? They turned the act of moving through a sacred space into a continuous lesson. A person would not just walk through a gateway, they would pass beneath a carving of the sun god, reinforcing his daily journey. They would not just climb a staircase, they would ascend past scenes of deities bringing order from chaos. The architecture itself became a three-dimensional book, its chapters written in stone and arranged along a ceremonial path. This ensured that the most vital knowledge, from history and myth to social hierarchy and spiritual law, was not stored away on fragile scrolls, but was baked into the very environment, repeated and reinforced with every festival, every pilgrimage, every daily glance. The consistency of this practice across the ancient world is a powerful clue. It suggests that these cultures shared a fundamental understanding that for knowledge to survive, it had to be built into the landscape on a monumental scale. The stones were not just meant to last, they were meant to speak, teaching every new generation the stories that told them who they were. The challenge of moving a 50-ton stone block with only wood, rope, and human ingenuity seems insurmountable. Yet this is precisely what multiple ancient cultures achieved, developing nearly identical solutions to the same immense puzzle. The great Sarsen stones of Stonehenge were shaped and raised into place. The multi-ton Moai statues of Rapa Nui were somehow walked for miles across the island, and the colossal foundation stones of Peru's Sacsayhuaman were fitted together with a precision that defies logic. This was the age of megalithic construction, a period where the most difficult path was consistently chosen. The technological parallels are too striking to ignore. Cultures separated by oceans all discovered the power of the lever and the roller. They mastered the use of earthen ramps to drag stones to impossible heights. They learned to shape granite and basalt with nothing but stone hammers and patient, abrasive sand. This was not a single invention spreading across the world, but a case of convergent engineering where different minds confronted the same physical laws and arrived at the same brilliant answers. Why go to such extraordinary lengths? The sheer effort involved, the decades of labor for a single structure, tells us that the stone itself was the message. Its immense weight and durability were a direct reflection of the importance of the ideas it represented. A small, easily moved shrine could be temporary, but a monument made of stones that took generations to place was meant to be eternal. The choice of megalithic construction was a declaration, written in the language of immense effort, that some truths were meant to last forever. The long, straight path to the pyramid was never just a road, it was a ritual in itself. Walking the Avenue of the Dead at Teotihuacan, a pilgrim would feel the massive pyramid of the sun growing slowly larger with every step, a physical progression that mirrored an inner spiritual ascent. This was architecture designed not as a static sculpture, but as a sequence of experiences, a carefully directed flow of human movement through sacred space. The journey was the destination. In Egypt, the approach to a great temple was a masterclass in psychological conditioning. You began in the bright, open sun of the outer courtyard, accessible to many. Then you moved into the dim, columned hall where the ceiling lowered and the light faded. Finally, you reached the small, dark, and utterly silent inner sanctuary, a space reserved for the high priest and the statue of the god. This architectural sequence used space to create a feeling of leaving the mundane world behind, step by deliberate step. The path itself was a teacher, using compression and expansion, light and shadow, noise and silence to guide the pilgrim toward a state of heightened awareness and reverence. Across the world, the Maya built wide, raised causeways of white plaster known as sakbiob that connected temple complexes across miles of jungle. These gleaming white roads were not the most efficient travel routes, they were ceremonial arteries. To walk the white road was to tread a path of purification, physically separated from the ordinary earth below, moving toward a sacred center. The very act of walking this defined route was a form of participation in the cosmic order. Why did cultures from the Americas to the Nile develop such strikingly similar choreography of movement? It reveals a universal insight into human psychology. These early architects understood that how you move through a space can fundamentally alter how you feel and what you believe. A long, straight avenue builds anticipation. A sequence of gateways creates a sense of passage and achievement. A path that narrows and darkens induces focus and introspection. They were building not just with stone, but with human experience itself, using the body's journey to prepare the mind for a meeting with the divine. The processional way was a mechanism for transformation, turning a simple walk into a profound spiritual narrative, where every footstep was a sentence in a story written upon the land. A single beam of winter solstice sunlight travels the length of a dark, narrow passage to illuminate a sacred chamber for just 17 minutes. This precise event, reenacted for over 5,000 years at Ireland's Newgrange, was not a quirk of construction but the entire purpose of the monument. The stones were arranged to capture that one fleeting moment of celestial connection, turning a tomb into a sophisticated timekeeping device. On the other side of the world, the Great Kiva of Cosa Rinconada at Choco Canyon is perfectly aligned so that sunlight strikes specific niches on the summer solstice, while other structures mark the complex 18.6-year cycle of the lunar standstill. These cultures were mapping time itself onto the landscape, using architecture to pin down the majestic and sometimes terrifying cycles of the cosmos. In Egypt, the temple of Amun-Ra at Karnak was oriented so that the rising sun on the summer solstice would shine directly along its main axis, flooding the inner sanctum with light in a dramatic reaffirmation of the sun god's power. The Maya, meticulous observers of the sky, designed buildings like the Caracol at Chichen Itza to track the movements of Venus, a planet they associated with war and whose appearances dictated the timing of royal ceremonies and military campaigns. This celestial encoding transformed static stone into a dynamic instrument. A temple was not just a place to watch the sky. It was a device that told you when to plant, when to harvest, when to worship, and when to crown a king. How could these isolated cultures all arrive at the same conclusion, that their most important buildings must be locked in an intricate dance with the sun, moon, and stars? The answer lies in a shared human experience of time. For these early societies, time was not an abstract sequence of minutes and hours, but a cyclical story written in the heavens. The predictable return of the solstice sun promised the rebirth of the world after winter. The shifting phases of the moon measured the rhythm of life. To build a structure that captured these cycles was to assert that human life was part of this grand celestial narrative. It was an act of bringing cosmic order down to earth, creating a fixed point of meaning in a world of constant change. The incredible precision of these alignments reveals a profound truth, that these monuments were the ultimate expression of a universal human desire to find our rhythm within the universe's own timeless beat. The number 7 was not chosen for the 7 tiers of a Mesopotamian ziggurat by chance. It was a sacred count, a deliberate echo of the 7 celestial bodies they watched traverse the heavens. This is the silent power of sacred numbers, a form of mathematical mysticism that gave invisible beliefs a physical, monumental form. Across the ancient world, specific numbers held a power far beyond their value for counting. They were seen as the very building blocks of cosmic order, and by weaving them into architecture, builders were aligning their work with the fundamental principles of the universe. For the Pythagoreans in ancient Greece, certain numbers were considered perfect, embodying divine harmony. This belief directly shaped the proportions of their temples, where the relationship between a column's width and height, or the length and breadth of the inner chamber, was governed by these perfect ratios. The goal was to create a space that did not just house a god, but that resonated with the same mathematical perfection the gods had used to create the cosmos. In India, the construction of Hindu temples was guided by ancient texts known as the Shilpa Shastras, which provided incredibly precise mathematical formulas for every element. The entire temple was a geometric manifestation of the universe, its layout based on a sacred square diagram called the Vastu Purusha Mandala. The number of petals on a carved lotus, the repetitive counts in decorative elements, all were numerical prayers, ensuring the structure was a living, breathing representation of a spiritual reality. Far across the world, the Maya embedded the sacred numbers of their elaborate calendar into their pyramids. The steps of a temple might number 13 to reflect the layers of the upper world, or 9 to symbolize the levels of the underworld. Their long count calendar itself was a monumental exercise in tracking vast cycles of time, all structured around a sophisticated numerical system that they then physically built into their cities. How did these numbers function as actual architectural elements? They were the invisible framework. A number like 4, representing the cardinal directions, would dictate a four-sided pyramid or a ceremonial earthwork laid out in a perfect square. This physically anchored the building to the four corners of the world. The repetitive use of a sacred number in a colonnade or a series of arches created a rhythm that was both visual and symbolic, a drumbeat of cosmic order made visible in stone. The independent emergence of these ideas points to a profound convergence of thought. It suggests that when early mathematicians and priests looked deeply into the nature of reality, many of them arrived at a similar conclusion, that the universe is not chaotic, but is underpinned by a beautiful and discoverable mathematical order. To build with sacred numbers was therefore the ultimate act of devotion and understanding. It was a way of saying that the same logic that governs the motion of the stars also governs the proper way to build a home for the divine. The stones were not just stacked, they were counted, each one a numeral in a grand architectural equation written to honor the hidden structure of all things. These ancient structures breathed with the land itself. In the scorching Mediterranean sun, the thick stone walls of megalithic temples acted like a natural thermostat, absorbing the day's heat to keep interior spaces cool and releasing it slowly during the cool of the night. This was not a happy accident of construction, but a deliberate and brilliant application of thermal mass. The stones were chosen not just for their strength, but for their ability to interact with the sun's energy, creating a stable, comfortable environment that required no fuel and produced no waste. Half a world away, in the humid jungles of the Maya, architects faced a different challenge. Their solution was the corbelled arch, a structure that allowed for taller, more open chambers where hot air could rise and escape, while strategically placed vents at the base drew in cooler, fresh air from outside. This passive ventilation system turned entire pyramids into naturally breathing entities, perfectly adapted to their tropical climate. The principles were universal, even if the methods were locally invented. In ancient Egypt, temple builders used the landscape itself as a tool. They oriented their massive structures to catch the prevailing northerly breezes, while the sheer density of the stone construction created a cool, dark refuge from the relentless desert heat. Walking from the blazing sunlight into the shaded, cavernous hall of an Egyptian temple was a dramatic sensory experience, a descent into a man-made oasis of cool stillness. In Persia, this mastery of air movement reached an artistic peak with the invention of the wind tower, or bajir. These elegant structures rose high above city dwellings, capturing winds from any direction and funneling them down into the living spaces below, often passing over pools of water to provide a refreshing, cooled breeze. This was air conditioning, engineered centuries before electricity, using only an intuitive grasp of physics and a deep respect for the natural world. Even the Romans, with their love for technological marvels, applied these passive principles alongside their famous aqueducts and hypocaust heating systems. Their public baths were masterclasses in environmental control, using underfloor spaces and hollow walls to circulate hot air from furnaces, while the buildings themselves were often positioned and designed to maximize solar gain in the winter and provide shade in the summer. The consistent thread running through all these innovations is a philosophy of cooperation, not conquest. These early architects did not seek to overpower their local climate with brute force, but to understand its rhythms and work in concert with them. They saw the sun, the wind, and the very earth as partners in creation. What does this ancient wisdom hold for us today, in an age of energy-intensive climate control? These monuments stand as a timeless lesson in sustainable design, proving that the most elegant and enduring solutions often come from listening to the environment and harnessing its innate power with grace and intelligence. The stones at Sacsayhuaman fit together like a three-dimensional puzzle carved by a master. This is the enigma of polygonal masonry, a construction technique so precise it defies simple explanation. Massive, irregular blocks of granite are shaped to interlock with their neighbors, creating a wall without a single drop of mortar, yet so seamless that even a sheet of paper cannot find a gap. This same astonishing method appears in the Cyclopean walls of Mycenae in ancient Greece, where giants were once thought to have stacked the stones. It forms the formidable foundations of Japanese castles like those at Osaka, designed to be earthquake-resistant. And it underpins the mysterious, sprawling walls of Etruscan cities in Italy. These cultures were separated by vast oceans and thousands of years, with no evidence of shared blueprints or communication. So why would they all independently choose one of the most labor-intensive building methods ever devised? The answer lies in the profound advantages hidden within this complex puzzle. A wall built with interlocking, irregular stones is incredibly resilient. Unlike a straight, mortared wall that can crack along its joints under stress, a polygonal wall is a single, flexible entity. During an earthquake, the stones in a mortared wall might all shift in the same direction and collapse. But in polygonal masonry, each uniquely shaped block is locked in place by the ones around it. When the ground shakes, the entire structure can shift and settle, the stones grinding against each other and then finding a new, stable position. It is a wall that moves and breathes with the earth itself. The construction process was an act of supreme patience and skill. Each stone was likely selected and then painstakingly shaped on site, a process of trial and error, where the masons would slowly carve the granite until it fit its designated space with impossible exactness. This was not a quick assembly line, but a slow, deliberate act of creation, where the wall grew one perfectly keyed stone at a time. The knowledge required was immense, a deep, intuitive understanding of geology, physics, and geometry. The builders had to know how to split stone along its natural grain, how to calculate angles and bearing loads, and how to shape a hard surface with simple stone and bronze tools. This convergent development points to a universal truth in engineering. When different cultures face the same fundamental challenge, building structures of immense permanence in active seismic zones, they can arrive at the same brilliant, if arduous, solution. The polygonal wall was not just a display of power, it was a declaration of a civilization's intent to endure, to build a legacy that would literally hold together through the ages. A discovery like that of the pyramids' encoded pi ratio forces us to reconsider the entire timeline of human knowledge. It is not an isolated case, but a pattern that echoes across the ancient world, a pattern that suggests a depth of understanding we are only beginning to grasp. Long before the Greek mathematician Pythagoras was born, Babylonian clay tablets recorded the principles of the theorem that would later bear his name, solving complex geometrical problems with confident accuracy. The builders of the Great Pyramid did not just align their monument to true north, they did so with a precision that implies a sophisticated grasp of the Earth's own shape and position in space, a form of early geodesy. This was not guesswork, it was the result of meticulous, long-term observation and a mathematical language capable of expressing profound cosmic relationships. The very endurance of these structures is its own kind of evidence. The Parthenon's columns, engineered with a subtle curvature to appear perfectly straight, or the way Inca polygonal walls dissipate seismic energy, reveal an intuitive mastery of material science and physics that allowed stone to cheat time itself. These were not primitive experiments, they were the products of highly refined technical traditions. So how do we explain this apparent leap in capability? The evidence carved in stone challenges a linear view of human progress. It suggests that complex mathematical and engineering principles were discovered, applied, and in some cases perhaps lost, long before our history books traditionally mark their invention. This does not require tales of Atlantis or alien intervention. It simply asks us to accept that ancient minds were every bit as capable as our own, and that their intellectual journeys, fueled by spiritual necessity and generations of dedicated observation, may have led them to truths we once thought were our exclusive property. The monuments stand as a permanent question mark against our assumptions, inviting us to wonder what other profound understandings have faded from memory, leaving only their magnificent, silent stone echoes behind. A massive stone lion stands guard over an empty gateway, its silent gaze holding a meaning that echoes across continents. Monumental gateways like the Lion Gate of Masonry or the towering Sun Gate at Tiwanaku were far more than simple entrances. They were universally understood as thresholds between worlds. These structures marked the ultimate boundary, the fragile line where the sacred met the profane. The inner world of order confronted the outer chaos, and the human realm touched the divine. To pass through one of these gates was to undergo a transformation, to leave one state of being and enter another. This is why their design was so consistently intentional and powerful across disparate cultures. The Hittites flanked their city gates with colossal stone guardians, mythical beings meant to ward off malevolent forces. The Romans built triumphant arches not just to celebrate military victories, but to purify returning armies, marking their transition from the bloody chaos of war back into the civilized order of the city. In China, the elegant Peifang gates defined sacred spaces and honored virtuous individuals, creating a visible framework for moral and spiritual passage. The psychological function was always the same: to make you stop, to make you aware that you were crossing a line of profound significance. The architecture itself enforced this feeling. The sheer scale of the gateway deliberately dwarfed the person passing beneath it, creating a sense of awe and humility. The thickness of the walls made the moment of transition a tangible journey through darkness into light. Elaborate carvings and inscriptions on the stone surfaces served as a final instruction or a warning, preparing the mind for the new realm it was about to enter. How could this concept of the spiritually charged gateway arise so independently from Greece to the Andes? It speaks to a foundational human experience of boundaries. Early societies did not see space as a uniform continuum, but as a series of layered realms, each with its own rules and dangers. The gateway was the architectural solution to managing that transition safely and meaningfully. It was a controlled point of contact with the other, a place where the community's identity was both protected and proclaimed. These silent stone sentinels reveal that for our ancestors, the most important journeys were not measured in miles, but in the spiritual distance crossed with a single, deliberate step. The stones themselves were designed to sing. Deep within Malta's hypogeum, a subterranean temple carved from solid rock, the chanting of priests would have resonated at a specific frequency, a low hum that seemed to fill the very air and vibrate through the body. This was not a happy accident of architecture. Across the ancient world, we find monuments engineered with a sophisticated understanding of sound, creating spaces where acoustics were as crucial as aesthetics. In the great ball courts of the Maya, a hand clap at one end would produce a series of distinct cascading echoes, sounds that may have been interpreted as the voices of gods or ancestors. The massive, corbelled stone chambers of Newgrange in Ireland naturally amplify certain tones, transforming a simple vocalization into something profound and otherworldly. And in the open-air theatres of ancient Greece, the design of the seating and stage allowed a single, unamplified voice to reach every one of the thousands of spectators with perfect clarity. These acoustic marvels were intentional, the result of precise calculations in stone. Architects strategically placed resonating chambers, angled reflective surfaces, and even used specific sound-dampening materials to sculpt the sonic environment. They understood the behavior of sound waves through empirical genius, long before the science of physics gave it a name. Why was sound so universally vital? It points to a multisensory ceremonial experience that we can barely grasp today. In these sacred spaces, sound was not just heard, it was felt. The reverberation in your chest, the strange echo that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. These sensations could induce altered states of consciousness, deepen communal trance, and make the presence of the divine feel terrifyingly real. The architecture was an instrument, and the ritual was its music. This shared acoustic priority reveals that ancient monument builders sought to engage the whole human sensorium, creating immersive environments where sight, sound, and feeling merged into a single, transformative experience. They were not just building for the eyes, but for the ears and the spirit. This profound understanding of how space shapes experience leads us to an even broader pattern, a set of unwritten rules that seem to have guided builders from the British Isles to the Andes. A builder's forearm became the foundation for a pyramid. This simple, intimate measure, the Egyptian royal cubit, was the universal key that unlocked monumental precision across the ancient world. It seems incredible that a unit based on the human body could produce such cosmic accuracy, yet this paradox lies at the heart of a profound mystery. Cultures separated by continents and oceans all developed their own standardized measurement systems, and these local rules often produced structures with eerily similar mathematical proportions. The great Sarsen stones at Stonehenge were laid out using a unit of length now called the megalithic yard, a measure that appears in stone circles across Britain. When researchers analyzed these layouts, they found a startling relationship. This megalithic yard holds a precise mathematical connection to the Egyptian royal cubit, as if both were derived from a common, hidden geometric principle. How could two completely isolated cultures arrive at measurement units that speak the same silent language of number and ratio? The answer lies in the universal human drive for order. To build on a colossal scale, you cannot rely on one person's foot or arm alone. You need a fixed, repeatable standard that every single worker and artisan can trust. The Egyptian state maintained physical cubit rods, master copies in granite that guaranteed a pharaoh's pyramid would rise with perfect symmetry from every corner. The Romans, with their vast empire, spread the Roman foot, a unit of measurement that brought uniform design to bridges, aqueducts, and cities from the deserts of Africa to the misty hills of Britain. This was not just about practicality, it was about imposing a human sense of harmony onto the raw chaos of the natural world. The Maya took this a step further, weaving their measurement system directly into their understanding of time. Their unit, the ton, was not just a length but also a period in their sacred calendar, fusing the dimensions of a temple with the cycles of the cosmos. Building a pyramid was thus an act of measuring out sacred time in stone. Why did this impulse for standardization emerge everywhere? Because monumental construction is the ultimate exercise in collective action. To coordinate thousands of workers quarrying, transporting, and placing multi-ton stones over generations, you need a shared language of dimension that is beyond dispute. A team working on the north face of a structure and a team on the south face had to be using the exact same rule, or the entire project would fail. The development of a standardized measure was the birth of a social contract written in stone. It declared that for this great endeavor we agree on a single truth, a common unit of reality from which our shared legacy will rise. This convergent invention points to a deeper truth about humanity. When we seek to create something eternal, our first instinct is to find a common measure, to anchor our grandest dreams in a foundation of shared, precise, and harmonious order. A modern skyscraper and a 5,000-year-old pyramid are engaged in the same silent conversation with the sun. The enduring principles of ancient monument builders did not vanish with their civilizations. They simply went underground, waiting for a new generation to rediscover their profound wisdom. Today, architects confronting the urgent challenges of climate change and soulless urban sprawl are looking back, finding inspiration in the very same sustainable strategies and human-centered designs we have been exploring. The ancient Persian wind tower, or Bajir, is not a relic. It is a blueprint for passive cooling that requires zero electricity. Contemporary designers are now integrating this ancient technology into modern buildings, creating structures that breathe naturally, just as their predecessors did. Similarly, the seismic genius of Inca polygonal masonry, with its interlocking stones that dance during an earthquake, is informing new research into earthquake-resistant construction. We are realizing that these early builders developed solutions to problems we are still grappling with today. This is not about nostalgia, it is about efficiency and meaning. The sophisticated proportional systems based on sacred geometry, once used to make a temple feel divinely harmonious, are now being studied for their psychological effects, applied in spaces from hospitals to homes to create environments that reduce stress and promote well-being. The ancient focus on community-oriented space, where the arrangement of buildings fostered social interaction and a shared identity, stands in stark contrast to the isolating design of many modern developments. We are learning that a public plaza designed with the same intentionality as the Athenian agora can revitalize an entire city block. This renewed interest represents a profound shift, a recognition that true architectural innovation might not always mean inventing something new, but sometimes remembering something timeless. The ancient builders understood that architecture must serve both the planet and the human spirit. They worked with their environment, not against it, using thermal mass, passive ventilation, and celestial orientation to create comfort. They built for the collective, creating legacies that unified society. In our search for a more sustainable and meaningful built environment, the most forward-thinking path may be to look back, to listen to the whispers of stone and sky encoded in humanity's oldest masterpieces, and to apply that eternal language to the world we are building for tomorrow. The debate over these shared blueprints strikes at the very core of how we understand human history itself. On one side of this great conversation stand those who see the hand of diffusion, the slow, deliberate sharing of ideas across continents through ancient, now forgotten routes of travel and trade. They point to the uncanny resemblance between the step pyramids of Mesopotamia and those of Mesoamerica, structures separated by oceans but united by a strikingly similar vision. Could these be evidence of a primordial connection, a thread of knowledge passed from one culture to another across vast, uncharted distances? The possibility of transoceanic voyages, once dismissed as fantasy, is now considered with greater seriousness, suggesting that our ancestors may have been far more interconnected than our history books have traditionally allowed. Proponents of this view argue that such specific technical solutions, like the corbelled arch or the precise solar alignment, are too complex to have been born independently time and again. They envision a world where knowledge flowed, however slowly, along invisible highways of human contact. Yet, standing firmly on the other side are the champions of independent invention. They propose a different, perhaps even more wondrous, explanation. What if these parallels are not proof of contact, but a testament to the universal architecture of the human mind itself? When faced with the same fundamental challenges, building a stable, towering structure, creating a calendar to track the seasons, or expressing a connection to the divine, different cultures may have simply arrived at the same elegant conclusions. The pyramid form, for instance, is not just a spiritual symbol, it is one of the most stable geometric structures for building tall with stone. The need to mark the solstice is a practical concern for any agricultural society. This perspective suggests that humanity shares a common cognitive toolkit, an innate sense of geometry and proportion that naturally leads to similar artistic and engineering solutions when confronted with similar needs. The pyramid, the circle, the alignment to the stars, these were not copied but discovered, like different scientists in separate labs, independently deriving the same mathematical formula. So which perspective holds the truth? The most compelling answer likely lies not in choosing one over the other, but in a complex tapestry woven from both threads. Some concepts, like basic geometric forms, almost certainly emerged independently, a natural consequence of human cognition interacting with the physical world. Others, particularly highly specific and complex technical innovations, might indeed hint at points of cultural exchange we have yet to fully uncover. This is not a debate with a simple winner, but an ongoing conversation that pushes us to refine our understanding of the past. The real value of this architectural evidence is not in proving a single theory, but in what it reveals about our shared human journey. These stones tell a story of a species driven by universal questions, a species that, whether working in isolation or in subtle communication, repeatedly reached for the sky to find its place in the cosmos. The monuments stand as a permanent challenge to our assumptions, asking us to see the ancient world not as a collection of isolated bubbles, but as a vibrant, dynamic landscape of parallel discoveries and potential connections, all encoded in a silent, global language of stone. From the Nile Valley to the highlands of Peru, a shared architectural language whispers a profound truth about our species. These monuments were not isolated achievements, but individual verses in a universal human poem, each culture discovering for itself that true harmony is rooted in mathematical proportion and celestial rhythm. They learned that to build for eternity, one must work with the earth, not against it, and that the most stable foundation for any great society is a shared commitment to a legacy beyond any single lifetime. This was not a transmitted blueprint, but a convergent discovery of the fundamental principles that govern beauty, stability, and meaning itself. Today, as we face global challenges of sustainability and community, we find ourselves returning to this ancient wisdom. Modern architects are now looking to the passive cooling of wind towers and the seismic resilience of polygonal masonry, realizing that these timeless solutions offer a path toward a more balanced and meaningful built environment. The silent stones of the past are becoming a vital conversation partner for our future. So the next time you stand before an image of an ancient temple or a stone circle, see it not just as a relic, but as a reflection of a shared human impulse to find our place in the cosmos and to leave a mark that speaks across the ages. We would love to hear which of these architectural mysteries captures your imagination the most. Share your thoughts in the comments below and let us know which ancient structure you find most compelling.